Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 38. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us for this Wednesday show. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I got to watch a little bit of that hockey game last night, and got to kind of chill out a tad bit here on the bye week, and watched I think the entire second and third period of that game, and so yeah, doing good. Excited about to watch a lot of football and not have to cover the Steelers really in the process this weekend. So looking forward to a good rest of the week here.
Steeler fans get a week off from the heart attack and the blood pressure going up, and so that's a good place to be. Yeah, I think a chiller podcast today, although our podcasts are always pretty chill, I guess. I don't know how you want to define that, but without the injury report, there was no traditional Tomlin Tuesday yesterday, though Tomlin did speak to the media after practice. I think they'll have some coaches today, and then they'll kind of settle into the bulk of the bye week. So what do you want to go from here, Dave? We want to talk about what Keith Butler, Matt Canada had to say, Mike Tomlin. There was no formal injury report given either. I don't know if there's any updates on those guys. We talk about Anthony McFarland, what the injury was with him with torn MCL, that apparently he had an issue dating back to college and re-injured it and I guess made it worse right at the end of the preseason this year. And so that was the injury with Anthony McFarland, who remains on IR recovering from a torn MCL.
Yeah, I would imagine probably, obviously not this weekend, but the weekend after, a week from Saturday would probably be the day that we'll see him elevated to the 50 or activated to the 53 from IR. And then the question becomes, what player does he replace? And you would tend to think that a player might be Kalen Ballage just because from a special teams standpoint there, but obviously a lot of things can change between now and then, so we'll have to see. But it does sound like he's close to coming back, and one guy that still doesn't we don't seem to know much of anything about it when he might return would be Stephon Tuitt, and Mike Tomlin wouldn't give any kind of time frame on Stephon Tuitt during when Mike talked to the media on what was yesterday, Tuesday, and even if Tuitt was to return to practice, let's say a week from Wednesday or a week from today, it's hard to imagine him playing in the game against the Browns. And at that point, I think it's kind of even questionable whether or not he would make it back in time for the Bears game at that. So obviously that's not set in stone, but judging by how they've kind of brought these other guys along once they've started resuming practicing, it would make it, to me at least, seem like a little bit of a stretch that Tuitt would be back by the game against the Bears. So that would then put the Lions game, I think, as the one with the best shot at Tuitt returning, and that is only if he resumes practicing a week from today. And man, if he can't start practicing a week from today, I mean, there's already a lot of questions about why it's taken this long for him to be ready. How much of it's mental related, how much of it's physical related. We just don't know. We've kind of been in the dark about this, dating all the way back to training camp and all. So it's just going to be one of those wait and see things. Anytime we get kind of an update, we'll pass it along and kind of speculate and go from there. But no real timetable on that. But they sure could use the 2020 Stephon Tuitt back. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like that'll be against the Browns.
Tomlin did say, for whatever it's worth, that Tuitt was making progress. I don't know if that should mean anything or not. Probably not. But, if and when Tuitt returns, he's going to need at least 2 weeks and probably that full 21-day window, because the guy has not played a game since January. The guy hasn't practiced in a formal practice session since January. And so you're going to need time just to get conditioning, get your body right, and be ready to go. So, I think week 10 at the earliest, and it may be longer than that for Stephon Tuitt.
Absolutely, and Mike Tomlin, obviously, as expected, was asked about the end of regulation and all the shenanigans that took place with the stoppage of the clock and the spike and all like that. And he's not over it. You can tell he's not over it, but he's ready to move on from it just the same. He said he's talked to New York about it and got an explanation. Not that he necessarily liked the explanation there, but long and short of it, it sounds like the comments that he did make, saying it was an embarrassment the other night after the game, and kind of an unprovoked after answering the question, there was that little pause, and then added it was an embarrassment. I think we all know how he felt after the game there. I don't think he's still completely over it, but he's trying to portray like he is. And I've went back and looked at that a couple more times, Alex, and I guess Tomlin's biggest issue was why there had to be a stoppage there for review.
Yeah, it is. That is the number one question. I forget who said it. Someone said that the refs were actually looking to see if Metcalf had stepped out of bounds, and not that if he had caught the football or not. They just miscommunicated what they were looking at prior to the fumble. But either way, I mean, obviously the play should not have been stopped. I still think even had it not been stopped, they get the spike off in time. So I don't think it really would have changed things drastically other than just a big delay in the review of it all. But yeah, I mean, the Steelers got the win, and so you just have no choice but to move on.
Yeah, and some people who were at the stadium, I think, are trying to say that the clock were all zeros after the spike, and
they were, but that's just the home clock operator. If you go back and review, you can clearly see there's a second left when Smith spikes.
Right. And that was my view, at least from the clock that we see on the television side of it there. That was my view on it. So the minutia wasn't great part of it, but in the end, I think, they them getting the opportunity to kick the field goal was, whether it be 1 or 3 seconds left, I think that was going to be the outcome of that thing, at least in the matter of the way that things had transpired in that. So it's unfortunate in all that. But, once again, this would be obviously a much, much bigger story had the Steelers lost the game. But, thankfully they were able to get the job done in overtime.
One last player note, Mike Tomlin again asked about Zach Banner, who was activated to the 53 for the Seahawks game, but was inactive, did not dress. Tomlin asked about that reasoning. He said, quote, "That's just something we wanted to look at on the other side of the bye, and that was the decision that was made last week. It has no reflection or bearing on the decision that we're going to make in the upcoming week." So, we'll revisit Banner's status, I suppose, after the bye. But I think at this point, with the line showing improvement, I don't think they're going to make any changes. And I think Haig is the more valuable and more versatile, more importantly, backup. And so I would not be surprised one bit to see Banner continue to be inactive until something else changes.
I'm with you. And, as we always like to say, sometimes these things have funny ways of working themselves out. I think I saw some pictures of Dan Moore back at practice the last time that they got together. So whatever hip injury that he had the other night, at least on the surface, doesn't seem to be serious. And even if it was a little bit more serious, he's got the bye week to kind of heal up on and all. And, it goes back to, once again, as long as Dan Moore's not killing you over on that left side, I think you kind of stick with him and let him go through the growing pains over there. Mm-hmm. And I would expect that to happen, assuming he's healthy enough to play after the bye. And then I think Okorafor's done good enough over there that, you talk about the continuity and all like that. I think you roll with that. And, every time anybody's asked about Joe Haig, and even unprovoked at times, they get Joe's doing a good job for us. So it would tend to go against the grain a little bit if at this point they were to, let's say, pull Joe Haig and dress Zach Banner. So I that's a long way of saying I'm with you there. I think after this bye, at least for the game against the Browns, that there's a very strong chance that Zach Banner is once again one of the or is the inactive offensive lineman.
I thought the most interesting comment that Mike Tomlin made on Tuesday was about James Washington. I know Dave and I spent a lot of time Monday during the podcast, Monday during the live stream, talking about why James Washington played only 8 snaps. And it just seemed to stand to reason a guy that played all those snaps that he did play in the first 2 quarters and then did not play a single snap in the second half or overtime, it felt like it had to have been, the groin-related issue that he was dealing with the week prior. Maybe he re-aggravated it or something like that. But Mike Tomlin asked about that, and he said, quote, "It's just matchup related." And that's all he said. And so he did not indicate that it was related to the injury one bit, which is a very curious decision. The way that I look at it, if we assume that's true, is that Washington – 6 of his 8 snaps came during the team's first 13 plays, which are the scripted plays. And so it seems like the Steelers' game plan and their script was to have Washington involved, but Seattle was doing something coverage-wise that made them want to change that and play more of McLeod and keep Claypool on the outside a bit more. So that seems to be the way the things went based off of the charting that we do. But still, 8 snaps for Washington in a long game like that is a very curious decision.
Yeah, especially it'd be one thing if you saw a snap here, a snap there, and then those 8 snaps were scattered out throughout the course of both halves. But thanks to our charting now that the great Tom Mead has done, we know that the 8th and final snap that James Washington played was around like the 6:20 or 6:40 mark of the second quarter, and that was, I think, a handful of snaps after the initial. What'd you say? Like 7 of the first 13 or 14? I forget what.
6. Yes, he played 6 of the first 13 snaps of the game for the Steelers.
Okay, so in other words, let's assume that was all related to script. All right. Mm-hmm. Did the Seahawks change that much defensively, or did you feel the need to change that much more offensively, where you only get that guy just a couple more snaps, or 2 more snaps in the first half, and then none in the. I still smell a rat there. I don't know if we know the full thing. Maybe James Washington didn't do much of anything during practice. Last week, coming off of that groin injury and all, and maybe he was a little bit tender at the time. But I think if you ask James Washington. He'd probably say, "I was healthy enough to go. I wanted to play." Right. But that might be one of those mysteries that we just don't hear more about. But it seems more curious than anything, just on the layout of when the snaps came and then how he got 0 in the second half.
Matt Canada was asked the same and had to try to talk up James Washington and seemed to imply about the injuries as well. But Canada says so much nothing that it's always hard to parse. But he said, quote, "James was out the week before and coming off some bumps and bruises. Obviously, we know how talented he is, just as the way the game played out and where we were at with all our situations. That's how it worked. James is certainly a guy we freaking love. His words, not mine. Know he can do a great job, and he will continue to be a big part of our offense, but he was not a big part of the offense on Sunday. And so we'll see what that looks like going forward. I'm sure there'll be ebbs and flows, and he won't play 8 snaps every single game. But I don't know if he's going to play quite as much as we anticipated with Juju being out.
Boy, if I'm James Washington and I was healthy in that game and I only played 8 snaps, you thought I was angry before. I will almost guarantee you this at this point, not that it wasn't already a guarantee, regardless of how much James Washington played, not only in that game but so far through 6 games. James Washington will not be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2022. I'm going to go out on a limb with that prediction for you.
Yeah, it's a big limb, and you're going out on. And you can almost feel bad for the guy because he's such a just quiet, low maintenance dude, never going to complain, never going to cause a stink or anything like that. And so you root for the guy in a contract year to make some money and have a good season. And you know that obviously his opportunities were going to be limited prior to Juju's injury. But you just want that guy to succeed because he just works so hard and just puts in the time and doesn't complain one bit. But he's probably sitting there going, "Man, just please play me."
Yeah, I don't want to kind of intermingle Tomlin. Was there anything else from Tomlin to really discuss there?
No.
Okay. Then on into the bunch of nothing that Matt Canada had to say again. There was a little bit about, kind of asked about the slot, I guess, position and all like that. Him kind of saying that you might see Washington. Does that make sense to see James Washington some in the slot moving forward? At least that's the way I kind of that word salad that Matt Canada's. Listening to Matt Canada must be a lot like listening to me sometimes, I guess. I don't know, but only bits and pieces are worth even talking about there. But it seemed like he indicated that maybe we'll see Washington some in the slot. Was that just gratuitous statement, or do you really think we'll see more of James Washington in the slot?
Well, I think they mix and match. I don't think you'll see a big uptick of slot snaps for Washington. What was that quote at? I can't find. Was that him talking about Ray and James? I can't find the exact quote.
I believe it was, or maybe it was Tomlin that said that. It was one of the two. I think that said that yesterday about him.
Okay, I don't remember what the quote was, and I can't find it in the Canada transcript. Okay, but to answer the question, I mean, again, yeah, I mean, it was back in 2019, basically, when all the injuries happened and AB was gone. They had to move those guys around. It was less static, in the AB era, it was always AB as the X most of the time, at least, and then Martavis as the Z and stuff like that. So once those injuries happened and AB was gone, they had to move those guys around. Juju was learning the X more and things like that. So I mean, you could play Washington in the slot. You can play any of those guys in the slot, basically, but how much you're going to do it and how effective that'll be are two different questions, and probably won't see that a whole lot. Washington primarily functions as an outside Z type of receiver. And so I think for them, Claypool and McLeod and Anthony Miller, when he gets ready, and even Cody White are probably more likely to see slot snaps than a James Washington would.
Right. And I'm trying to I can't find it in here myself, but I know there was something in there that had me kind of scratching my head about Washington potentially playing in the slot there. But anyway, it doesn't seem ideal. I mean, yeah, all of them should know all the positions, and you should be able to move those guys around and whatnot. But within that, I don't view Washington as the primary guy that should be in the slot.
Sure. Anything else from the Matt Canada Machine 3000? That anything interesting to say? I'm trying to go back and through. I mean, he talked about Freiermuth and his, professionalism and the growth that he's showing. I did a video this morning on Steelers Depot that illustrates why Ben trusts Freiermuth so much, and I think you'll see his numbers continue to rise the rest of the season as kind of being that trusted Juju type of weapon in the absence of Smith-Schuster.
I think now really the only big question about the wide receiver group is what happens with Cody White moving forward, and can they potentially get Anthony Miller on this 53-man roster and working handful of snaps in a game out of the slot, moving passes by. To me, I don't know how quickly maybe Anthony Miller can pick up stuff. Possibly not by the time the Browns game rolls around, but straight look. Here's the thing too. How much does Cody White give you on special teams that you would be giving up by having a guy in Miller in there? And I've never really kind of viewed Miller as being an overly great special teams player. So that might be something to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, White doesn't play a lot on special teams. I mean, he can a little bit. I don't know if he's a starter on any single unit. So you might not be losing a lot there, even though, I don't think Miller is going to be any sort of an asset there either.
Right. So, I guess we'll see a week from Saturday if there's either an elevation involved there. But the thing is, if you elevate, then you have to have another inactive on top of it, even if you don't bring him, up to the 53-man roster. I suppose you could get into a situation, but why would you want to burn up a elevation on an Anthony Miller if you didn't have to, if it wasn't injury related on top of it, So what I'm getting at here is I suppose you could elevate Anthony Miller and just make Cody White inactive,
Right. Sure.
If you wanted to do that. But once again, you only have 2 elevations on a practice squad guy before you have to, put him on the 53-man roster for the third time there. So I guess it's not out of the question. Where I'm at right now, and obviously things can change in a hurry, I would probably not expect Anthony Miller to dress and play against, or at least to be on the inactive roster come a week from Saturday. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's possible. At least at some point, sooner than later, he's going to dress and play. I think he's, in terms of veteran slot options, they signed him for a reason. He can certainly, I think, fill a role for this team. And so whenever that time comes, I could see it that Miller gets elevated for the first 2 weeks, and then that third time, if they still want him, they just bring him up and cut Cody White. I think there's flexibility there and some time that will give this team to give this team some time to weigh its options.
I think we agree, though. I think we did the other day that we're, the less that we see of Ray in the slot, the better. And I mean, the guy gives it his all, and I think that's one thing that Canada mentioned when talking about that yesterday was the fact that he's in there, he works hard, and yeah, I mean, it shows up on tape too that he tries to do his job on blocking, but just as a receiving threat. Just isn't there. How many times do you think he has been targeted, more than 5 yards past the line of scrimmage since he's been with the Steelers?
I mean, he just hasn't been targeted a lot in general. In terms of that number, it's a low percentage. I know there was one on Sunday. It's probably 5 times.
Let me see if I can pull this up here.
I don't know if you had the number
real
there.
Quick here.
Yeah, I mean, the guy played 52 snaps and had 2 catches for 18 yards. So the efficiency really isn't there in that game. And so, yeah, I mean, McLeod should play some, and he will play some, and he's a hard worker and a different skill set, kind of a shiftier kind of guy. And so there's some excitement there in the slot. But, yeah, he's not, he's always going to be pretty limited in how much he's going to produce for your offense.
Let's see. Ray McLeod, 2 targets, 5 yards or more down the field in the time that he's been with the Steelers.
How many targets total, though?
How many targets total would be?
How many times has he been targeted as a Steeler?
That would be, let me see here, 9? Does that sound right?
9. That's what the number is. Yeah. Okay. So obviously, yeah, he's more of the underneath RPO screen game type of guy. Try to get him in space.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's all that he is, then he really limits you working out that spot, in my opinion.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I want a guy that can both work underneath and work down the field as well too. And
that's why I think Miller's going to come up at some point.
Yeah, I think he needs to. I just question whether or not that would be by this week or the next game. So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's flip over to Keith Butler, Dave. And the first question was a very interesting one. I think the most interesting commentary that Butler had. And I'm glad someone finally asked it. Why Robert Spillane's playing in some of those 3rd down, 1-4-6 dime packages. And I'll read Butler's quote here. Quote, Spillane has done a good job for us in 3rd down situations. A lot of times when we want to run some stunts up front with him, he does a good job with that. He's got a good feel for the timing of when we want him to blitz and faking blitzing sometimes. He's been around here as long as any of those guys, so he knows a little bit more about it. At some things, he's a little bit better than they are. In some things, they're a little bit better than he is. That they referring to Devin Bush and Joe Schobert. So interesting commentary there from Butler. I can't.
He must not think that people are out there chart this stuff.
Yeah. To the point about blitzing, when Spillane's been out there, I think it's 19 snaps, mostly in that 1-4-6, some of the 2-3-6 dime. He's only blitzed once, and that came one of the last snaps against Seattle last week. And maybe you could argue that they're doing some fake stuff with him or the potential of blitzing, but the idea that Spillane is a core component of those blitzing packages is not accurate.
It doesn't make sense overall if you got a healthy Bush and a healthy Joe Schobert either.
I know that.
Go ahead.
I know they run more games and stunts because that 1-4-6, it's a 3 outside linebacker package with Watt and Highsmith and Ingram, and so they're always twisting and someone's off ball. Usually it's Ingram and they're kind of doing some stuff. So I mean, in that respect, it's accurate to say there probably is more blitzing. There is more blitzing done in that package in general, but Spillane has not been super involved in the actual blitz or stunt component of it.
And while Spillane seems to be very smart and have a good grasp of the defense and all, from a pure coverage standpoint, and knowledge of the defense and quarterback of the defense, and that, wouldn't you much rather have maybe Schobert out there?
Yeah, I mean, and those guys will play in the traditional dime in regular kind of 2-minute and a half end of game situations. They'll put Bush out there, put Schobert out there. So it's not Spillane's being used in a very specific package. And I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse about it, but it just still can't. When Butler says that Spillane does things better, what are those things? Is it blitzing? I mean, even if you give him that, they're not blitzing Spillane. Is it just the illusion of blitzing? Is it a better stunter? Again, he's not doing much of that. So even if that's the case, which it may be, you can make a case for that, they're not using it in that package.
Right. It doesn't add up overall. And what does it say about having a first-round linebacker in Devin Bush that he can't get those snaps?
Right. Or Joe Schobert, are you traded for to play over Robert Spillane and is paying good money, by the way?
Right, and not that it should come down just to money aspect there, but I mean pedigree, and the Steelers are a big pedigree team, right? Obviously they do have a nice long history of having undrafted players mixed in on the roster as well too there. But given his druthers, Kevin Colbert will go after the pedigree player 9 times out of 10 and have that player play a lot of snaps too. On top of it all doesn't add up overall there, and that has, and obviously the play so far through 6 games, and we've talked a little bit this already. There's a lot of talk this week about Devin Bush, and I think with good reason. We talked, I think the other night on the live stream as well too, because that was actually, I believe, or was it? Yeah, it was yesterday or day before. I forget when it was, but it was the actual 1-year anniversary of Devin Bush suffering his knee injury against the Cleveland Browns last year in Week 6 and all. Okay, so now he is 1 year or not quite a full year from surgery. I guess that would be maybe a day or two from now. In today's medical Marvel world and how quickly these guys get back from injury and all like that, and maybe it's a better question to ask Dr. Mel, have her chime in on, is there any reason to think that Devin Bush at this point isn't maybe fully trusting that knee 6 games into a season and being a full year? A lot of apologists for Devin Bush are using that. Well, he doesn't fully trust his knee. It's only been a year. You can't expect him to be back to what he was before he suffered that injury against the Browns. But, well, what was he before he suffered that injury against the Browns anyway?
Well, I think he was playing pretty well prior to the injury. I think he was playing better at this point before the injury last year than he is right now. I'm not going to sit there and use the ACL as the crutch for that, but I do think he was really showing some good signs of improvement prior to the injury.
Well, he was that sideline player. He still wasn't.
But even in coverage, I think just overall his overall angles and things like that were better from his rookie season.
Okay. The game against Denver would probably speak otherwise, but okay.
Well, I mean on that play, those were corner routes with inside leverage. The one was the coverage bust because they had a blitz that they didn't run right on that play, and that wasn't on Devin Bush. And the second one, I think, was him just being out leveraged. So I mean that's a tough position for any linebacker to be in. But I mean obviously he still has a long ways to go.
Back to the root of the question though. Is there any reason to believe that final rehab or this knee injury has caused him to be less of a player?
Well, I mean, it's impossible for us to really answer. The question, I think, would be the mental aspect of it, and that's, again, really hard for us to answer. But how long can you use that excuse for? Are you going to use that for the rest of the season and next year? I mean, at some point, he's healthy enough to play. He is playing. He's been in all situations kind of guy. He's got to play better, and that's the bottom line. When he's out there, that's the expectation. You can't use the excuse for that, really, I think, anymore.
I'm trying to boil this all on back to why isn't he the guy in the defense other than Robert Spillane?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, with that Spillane thing, I mean, it's Schobert and Bush. I look at it, why is Spillane the guy over both of them? And so that's, it's not just a Devin Bush thing, but just overall for Bush's play when he's out there. We talk about the playmaking, and I agree. You want to see more splash plays. That's going to be important for this defense. But I think for him, it just starts with doing the routine things routinely, just playing your gap, making the tackle, and just kind of playing consistently sound and doing your job. And I don't think we've seen enough of that from Devin Bush. So until we see that, the playmaking's all gravy. You got to do your job first, and he's got to do a better job of that.
And he's got to make more plays, plain and simple. And he gets swallowed up by Keith Butler made sure to point out that a lot of the issues that this defense had the other night were mostly related to defensive linemen not being in the right spot. I would suggest that's probably mostly bugs that he's talking about from my look at the tape overall. Maybe some louder milk as well too in there. I felt okay about Wormley and where he was for most of the night on the defense. I didn't find it so much errors on Wormley's part, but okay. But I mean, here's the thing. This isn't Dick LeBeau's 2004 5 defense, right? Where you 2-gap this stuff and you keep your linebackers clean, that kind of stuff. This is a very penetrating front nowadays, and linebackers, part of being a linebacker in general around the NFL, because there's very few 2-gap. From what I've seen, very, very few 2-gap and type fronts these days because of the need to penetrate more, because the game is so much quicker nowadays than it was. Don't have the fullback mostly around the league there. These linebackers have got to be able to stack and shed. They have to be able to avoid the trash right now. So that seems to be another excuse that we seem now attached to Devin Bush is, well, in order for him to make plays, you got to keep him clean.
Yeah, I mean, the best linebackers are able to work through the trash and don't necessarily require that. Obviously, it's better when they are, but that isn't always how the defense is structured, as you said. I mean, what he was trying to do specifically on Sunday was he was trying to shoot some of those gaps and get over I think it was the guard or the tackle, and he just wasn't able to get to the spot in time. He was getting washed down the line by, I think it was the right guard or right tackle on a couple of those plays. So you just want to – he's a bursty athletic guy, but he's got to shoot that gap quicker to be able to hit that hole and not get washed and cut off like that. So maybe I'll do a video on that later this week. But he was just getting washed out of place because he's trying to shoot the gap and he can't quite get there in time.
How would you rate his play, Devin Bush, overall through the first 6 games? And you chart the defense. I mean, I obviously watched y'all 22 as well too, but you probably spend more tape time on the defensive side of the ball in any given week than I do.
Yeah, I mean, the charting, that's a lot of stuff that happens pre-snap, so I don't necessarily look at it from a grade lens when I'm charting it, but when I'm watching it back, obviously, it's not been good. I mean, it's been, again, I'm happy that he's healthy, or like he's available to play. I think we take that for granted a little bit, but we're kind of past that point. I was talking about that preseason week 1. It's week 6. I mean, we're kind of done talking about that stuff. So, I mean, it's been a grade, I don't know, a C. I mean, it's not where it needs to be for what I think he's capable of doing. I think he would even agree to that.
From where you stand right now, if you were Kevin Colbert, are you picking up his 5th-year option right now?
Probably not. I don't think his play has warranted doing that yet.
And we have some breaking news on the Cleveland Browns to pass along that Case Keenum will start for the Browns against the Broncos on Thursday night. Get your popcorn ready.
And Teddy's hurt too, so it might be Locke versus Keenum Thursday night. So, all right, so they're trying to keep Baker, maybe they're not trying to do it, but giving Baker more time to get healthy and get right for that Steelers game in Week 8, it sounds like.
It sounds like that they are trying to get to the Steelers game. Yes, absolutely. Baker's obviously playing through that left shoulder injury, and that, like it or not, that thing's not going to be right all the rest of this season. So he's if he can make it through, then he would obviously have shoulder surgery after the season. I would go on count on that. The thing is can he make it that far? Would be the, luckily for him, it's not his throwing shoulder, but how many more times can he land on that shoulder like he did? That thing's got to just keep coming out and getting put back in. At some point, it's going to be like a Juju situation, I guess, where Juju's was just too far, gone that they had to fix it,
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I guess, can you even guarantee that Baker's going to play Week 8? I mean, my strong suspicion is that he will, but I suppose you can't at this point because he was supposed to get a second opinion on that shoulder, and so if that's the second opinion, now he's not playing. I mean, did they see something else with that shoulder that says like
Possibly.
we got to maybe shut this thing down for a little bit? So we'll see. That's a very beat up Browns team right now. No Kareem Hunt, no Nick Chubb Thursday. I think Chubb will probably play Week 8, but we'll see. No JOK, so that team is the walking wounded.
And here's the thing on top of it is, even if Baker does, we're jumping way ahead here, but it's what we do. Even if Baker does play past, obviously not going to play Thursday night, but plays against the Steelers, do you want him running around doing stuff outside of the pocket there, taking some pops? Do you want him holding on to the football with that Watt kid running around back there and the Melvin and Highsmith, boy, all those guys right now. I mean, those guys getting back to health is a sight to see, and something that really we haven't seen the Steelers defense really have since, I guess, the middle of the Raiders game, right? When Highsmith and Watt had those groin issues, and I think I think Ingram's been fine throughout this thing here, but I mean, we saw the fruits of that the other night against the Seahawks, most definitely there. So I guess what I'm getting at there is you're probably going to be a quick short game from one Baker Mayfield, assuming he's able to play against the Steelers, and that limits what Baker Mayfield does.
Yeah, naturally, he's someone that wants to extend the play and scramble. That's how he got hurt in that re-hurt in that Cardinals game when he was trying to scramble and make the play, and he lost the football and got pounded for it. And
the other Watt got him.
Oh yeah, was it JJ that got him?
Yeah, JJ got him from behind. And Jay was, and to JJ's credit, he was the first one there. He thought he hurt him pretty bad. Went over, but it was JJ that got him from behind. And look, it's murderer's row right now, if you will, for Baker Mayfield, because You just come off of playing that good front of the Cardinals that can get after the quarterback there. Von Miller evidently wants to kill whatever tackle. Can I even say that on a podcast quoting a guy? I mean, Von Miller said, "I don't know what tackle I'm going to go up against, but I'm going to kill him," or something like that. To that degree, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Their offensive line's hurt. Wills has been hurt. Hubbard's out for the year. I don't even know who their tackles are at this point. So yeah, I mean, it's a beat up offensive line trying to protect the beat up quarterback.
I don't know. That beat up offensive line of theirs sure did enough of a number on the Steelers last year in the wild card game, didn't they?
Yeah, I try not to think about that too much, but I know with their current, I'm just saying that they have a lot of injuries across the board.
Davy Downer taking over here.
I like that, Davy Downer. That's
where were we? Boy, we went way. Get a shovel and help get us back to where we were.
Dig out the other side. Yeah, Keith Butler talking about Devin Bush, and we were talking about Devin Bush and his play. I think we kind of tied up that conversation. Well, Bush has to play better. Obviously, I think he needs to get to a better place. But to me, it's less about the playmaking right now as it is about just getting back to basics. And then once we get to that point, then you focus on making the big plays. Because if you get too focused on the big play, then you don't do the little things well, and it's just going to snowball on you.
Let's leave it at this. I don't want to spend this podcast banging on Devin Bush. Lord knows I've banged on him enough up until this point here. But we have got to start seeing more playmaking from him, period. And not necessarily stuff that shows up in the stat sheet. You just got to see him stick out more on tape. And I think what you do right now, okay, I have said my piece, you have said your piece, whatever. You draw the line in the sand right now. Because make no mistake about it, they've got to make this decision next offseason here. So now you essentially have what might just be, you hopefully hope it's more than 11 games left, in the season. But that's the short end of it there. We have got to see from this point moving forward here, one Devin Bush making more impact on the defensive side of football moving forward.
Right.
And if it was the knee or whatever, the trust, okay, he is a year beyond that now. Once again, let's wipe the slate clean on him, and then let's judge this kid from this point forward moving on. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, I think so. And that fifth-year option becomes fully guaranteed. It's no longer you can kind of decline
dance around it, right?
Yeah, so you got to make that decision and stick with it. And so that I think plays a bit of the calculation whenever the time comes as well. So yeah, watching Bush going forward. All right, Dave.
Does Minka deserve how much? There's a lot of talk about Minka as well too, and I think a lot of it maybe stems from Pro Football Focus grades and all like that. But where do you weigh in right now on the play of Minka through the first 6 games?
Yeah, I'm not as dire as PFF is grading him as like the worst safety in football. He's certainly not that. I don't think he's been his typical Minka self. I think the tackling's been actually better than people give him credit for. If you look at some of the numbers that Josh Carney does, we'll see what that looks like after this disaster of a week that was the tackling by the Steelers' second half defense. But I do think we kind of forget about some plays. He had that forced fumble at the end of that fourth quarter that should have been recovered by Pittsburgh. It took a great bounce back into the running back's hands. And so that was a playmaking moment that we kind of forget about because it didn't result in an actual turnover. So I think he has to be better. I think it feels like maybe he's pressing a little bit too much trying to make that big play. But I don't think it's been as bad as PFF makes him out to be.
And go back to the key, what was it, the 4th down stop against Buffalo? I mean, that was a key. I mean, that, you probably don't get that win if you don't have that stop by when Watt ducked inside and Minka came all the way down and got the stop. Was that on a run or yeah, it was a run?
That was a run by it was a jet play or something like that, and that led to the 4th and 1 that Sutton.
Right, exactly.
Right?
It was a 3rd down stop, and then it led to the 4th down stop, and then it led to the punt, which led to a block punt for the other. It all rolls together there, I know, but I mean it's easy to forget about the how does that game go if Buffalo picks up that 1st down on that 3rd down,
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. So I mean, obviously he's been without an interception, hasn't been close a couple of times, I guess, but not like super. Well, he had one bad drop against the Packers, but I think those plays will come. So again, he's not been as good as he's been the last 2 seasons, but he's not been as bad as I think some people are making him out to be either.
If you'd quit picking on him on Twitter too and showing,
God forbid, you post one clip of a receiver pancaking a guy and you act like you hate the guy. I was afraid Minka was going to come after him. He's probably still going to do that at some point and yell at me. I'm waiting for that shoe to drop.
People don't understand that, or maybe they do at this point. People either like this show or they hate this show. I don't think there's really much in between in there because
we're 12 seasons in. I
know.
People pick a side.
We try to look at things as objective, and oftentimes that leads to us posting some not so positive clips on the Twitter machine and talking about kind of the negative stuff that goes along as in a season on top of it there. But I mean, it's just what we do to try to look at this thing from all angles there.
Yeah, and I was just showing something that you don't pick up on the TV tape because the cameras probably didn't catch it. And so like DK Metcalf, it was more of a compliment to Metcalf just being like a big, strong dude that's playing to that size and pancakes Minka on a run play. It wasn't like knocking Minka that much for it, but it was just, this is DK Metcalf, and he's capable of doing those kinds of things to the best players in football.
Ian Rappaport says, essentially, Baker Mayfield still has a chance to play the following week, but Sunday to Thursday was just too fast. Now he'll focus on rehab and tightening up the shoulder.
Has a chance, so I don't know how you define how much of a chance that is. My guess is he'll play against the Steelers, but we'll wait and see.
Mm-hmm. We'll see what's left of that Browns team, too. They're going to be really banged up going into that game against the Broncos, that's for sure.
Yeah, if they drop to 3-4, then they're in a real tough spot there with the Steelers on deck.
And look, has Cleveland played a divisional game yet?
I don't believe so. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I'll have to double check on that. But obviously, this would be the got to get to that point. But it would be the Steelers' second one, and to go 0-2 in the division, 7 games into the season would not be very advisable for the Steelers. Obviously it's not a hole that you still couldn't dig out of, but it's just not going to be fun to think about. Maybe at that point, we'll see what happens with the Ravens and the Bengals. Obviously playing this coming weekend here, but I mean, if you have like a 6-1 Ravens team and then a 2-3-4 Steelers team at that point, and then with the Steelers having 2 losses, that's real tough to dig out of, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would be. So big game for Pittsburgh whenever they play next, and it'll be an important game for both sides. Mm-hmm. It's very much shaping up to be that kind of a game in Week 8. So Keith Butler also talked about Trey Norwood and talked him up about how he said he's come a long way and how smart he is, how easy he is to coach. That's been kind of the phrase that Butler and everyone's used with Trey Norwood basically since day one, how well he takes to coaching, how smart he is. And I think they've kind of reduced his role. I believe I mentioned this on Monday. They reduced his role to kind of playing basically primarily and exclusively in dime packages. And I think paring down those snaps from a little bit and allow him to focus on some specific packages has probably been a good thing for the rookie, and he's playing pretty well.
Absolutely. And the more experience he gets, the more things that he sees, hopefully that'll help him. I thought in his limited amount of snaps that he played, once again, I think we talked about this the other day there, really surprised me overall. I thought he really represented himself well in that game. That was good to see, especially, man, you get a 7th round draft pick like that to stick. I mean, good on him.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from Keith Butler or Matt Canada or Mike Tomlin, for that matter, you want to talk about, Dave?
I think we've hit on all of it, pretty much.
And I know that McLeod and Freiermuth briefly spoke to the media yesterday. I don't know if they had anything incredibly interesting to say. Freiermuth said his confidence is growing and it felt good about, obviously getting all those targets and playing time against Seattle. But, that's, just you would expect that as he grows and as he continues to get more involved in his offense.
This might be insignificant, and maybe I had to go look at the spacing a little bit more on that. But on that first setup run, we talked about the Eric Ebron, jet and the touchdown on and the handoff on that. The setup. Now they obviously ran that with more than just Ebron coming into motion there, but they did use Ebron earlier in that game going the other direction. That is funny. You can almost count on the setup of any play being going the other direction. Why is that? Because teams have a different look at it, especially from the end zone view of it, that makes it kind of harder to decipher one way. Well, when you look at, they just did this in this quarter, be on the lookout for this in the next quarter, is because you're looking at it different. Why is it oftentimes, I guess what I'm getting at is you see things happen early, the setup play going the other direction?
That's a good question. I hadn't even really picked up on that. I don't know. Is it always is it to the different side of the field? Is it always boundary to boundary? Is it boundary to field? Because that might be a component of where that play gets run.
I'm not that deep. Just going the other direction as far as the tape's concerned. Okay. As far as actual direction on the field, it seems most of the time that the setup play is run one direction, and if they go back to it and it ends up breaking big, it's going the other direction. Just something that's always stuck out. But anyway, going back, that wasn't what I wanted to highlight there. The fact was that pre-snap on that setup, which ended up being Ebron carrying out the fake on that play. I think it ended up being a handoff to Najee on that play on the setup one there. The motion guy, I think it's Cody White's going left to right, and then he settles on the on the far side of the formation there next to Freiermuth. Go back and look at that on the All-22. Was Freiermuth trying to get him to tighten up the spacing on that?
What do you mean by tighten up? Like telling him to align tighter or something?
Yeah, wanting him. It just seemed like he had some sort of direction for Cody White in there. It stuck out to me as a young player trying to instruct player where he needs to be in a formation there.
No, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that, so I'll have to go back and watch. So good eye by you.
Just go check that out. Let me know what you see there.
Yeah, I will. All right, Dave. I think that covers.
And the reason I bring it up is if indeed that's the case, that's because you hear Canada talk about how smart he is and all like that, and didn't Mike Tomlin talk a little bit about Freiermuth as well too? I can't remember, but just how smart he is and how he's picking up things, and if he's picked up things to the degree that he's helping other players know where to line up as a rookie really speaks volumes.
For sure. I think he's a very smart player. He understands leverage extremely well, and I point some of that out in my video this morning on Steelers Depot. Speaking of the All-22, Dave, I know we've both gotten a chance to go back through the tape. What have you picked up on? What have you seen that either surprised you or confirmed something that you saw watching the game live?
I thought the offensive line had an incredible amount of push overall in that game. We talked about Kendrick Green. There were a lot of good I thought Kendrick Green did a lot better job of staying on his feet in his game in this game, and that's one thing I've really knocked on him for in the first 5 games prior to that. And I thought he just represented himself well, especially out in space. Was able to get off the ball really, really clean. I thought Dotson moved a lot better in this game. I just thought top to bottom, the offensive line, there were a lot of instances where you see really a lot of push from up front there. Yeah, the pass protection at times wasn't flawless without a doubt there. I thought Dan Moore had a rough kind of start to that game, but before he went out of the game, I thought he had kind of settled down a little bit on that as well too. And I think one thing that really kind of stuck out to me, and look, Ben Roethlisberger's got his warts for sure so far this season, and I'm not sure how much better it's going to get with him pushing the football down the field. And if we're going to look back 6 weeks from now and say, boy, look at his intended air yards and his completed air yard average. But I tell you one thing that did stick out to me, and that was on the cover 2 hole shot to Deontay Johnson. just on a pure mechanics aspect of that play, and been reading. I mean, that's definitely a right to left read for him. And Deontay's his third read in that thing. And I thought if you look at his footwork and how he kept resetting each time and his eyes following his progression, and then ultimately the throw to Deontay was to the outside where only his guy is going to. I just thought that entire play from the end zone view showed that Ben himself has maybe made some strides in just like overall mechanics. And he stepped up, and the footwork, everything. If you look at the end zone view on that, I don't think there's anything not to like about that play when it comes to Ben Roethlisberger.
No, it was it was probably the best story we had all night, and that was a good clip that you tweeted out from the end zone angle when you see the eyes and feet working in sync, and that's so important for a quarterback. And so that was, to me, his best rep of the entire night.
Especially when we talk about, just a few weeks ago, we're talking about his mechanics and all, and all like, and I'm sure his hip's still hurting and all like that. But that really stuck out to me, his footwork and just overall mechanics and everything that went along with it.
Yeah, but he definitely got away with some throws in that game for sure. And you can't have that going forward. This offense, as we talked about Monday, does not have a lot of margin for error, and turnover certainly is not going to help the cause. And so there were just too many plays where you just kind of wonder, what the read is, what the thought is. Even that one that got tipped up and nearly picked, even if that pass isn't tipped, that might get picked by Jamal Adams because, that's such a tight window throw. I know it's goal line and every throw is going to be tight, but that was a bad decision by Ben in the first place to even attempt that throw, in my opinion.
I hate to think what would have happened if Chase Claypool doesn't come charging up from behind.
Right, but even if that pass wasn't tipped up in the air, if that pass just gets there on target, Adams is blanketing Claypool. Like it's not going to be a completion. It's not even going to be close to a completion. It probably gets picked. So I'm almost glad the pass was tipped, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hear you.
With Kendrick Green, I don't know. I felt like going back through it, I didn't feel quite as good about his performance when I watched it live. This guy, and I know that it's a tough block to make, but it's one that centers have to do. He is not converted or hit on a back block on those pulling plays at all this season, and it failed again on Sunday. And so if they want to pull Kevin Dotson, and maybe that's why they haven't pulled him quite as much this season, Green cannot cut that off on the backside with that back block, and he's just missed time and time and time again. I don't know if that's a coaching thing or a Green thing, but it is not working, and that's been frustrating to see it not get better at any point this season.
You certainly haven't seen him really effectively pull off any reaches, reach any real good gap over reach blocks or anything like that. And right. I do agree that you have to, backside stuff and all like that. Yeah, you got to be careful on.
Yeah, I'll probably put up a clip again. I'll get killed for it, I'm sure, but of just 7 or 8 missed back blocks. And it's a tough block to make, I get. And if they shoot that gap, it can be tough to do. If they slant down and crush your face, it can be tough to do. But if they want to pull that guard and pull Dotson, they got to get Green to be able to execute that kind of down block looking thing on the backside. And Green's really been ineffective trying to hit it.
All right, what else stuck out? I thought Najee really ran hard, played a good game overall, and he's still having to earn some yards behind the line of scrimmage, but that's what you got him for, right? I mean that kind of player, the offensive line, indeed wasn't flawless there, but success rates are success rates, and I think that's the black and white of it. I would still like to see more, especially, and I hit on this the other day, you got in that 2nd and 5 situation later on in the game. I stack box or whatever. I'm not so sure I don't run into that anyway to try to get 2 or 3 yards and then set up a much more manageable third down situation. Now, the play that they did run, it ended up being caught by Chase Claypool, but he pushed off to get it. Then you get into the whole chicken and the egg thing. If he doesn't push off, is that more on Chase Claypool for pushing off? Is it still complete if he doesn't? I get all that, but I mean that's why you got a first round running back in there, in my opinion. He's not Derrick Henry, I'll tell you that. But definitely like to see, like what I've seen so far as what Najee Harris is bringing to this team. I think one of the things drawback once again go ahead of the draft and all when breaking down Najee Harris, especially from a statistical aspect, is he can deliver you the 10 to 15-yard runs. But there's probably not going to be throughout his career many 20 or yard more runs. He's definitely not going to be that thoroughbred breakaway guy that Derrick Henry. That guy is just. You watch that guy, you just wonder how. I mean, that's a planet theory guy right there. We talk about all the time. There, it's just amazing how a guy that size and that build can run that fluidly and just run away from people. He's not that, but once again, it all comes down to success rates, and that's why you got him. He definitely can catch the football out of the backfield. I think you will see him become a better pass protector as time goes on. He's no Le'Veon Bell yet, but I think he's making strides in that area there.
I agree. We need to upgrade to Derrick Henry from planet theory to universe theory, because for a couple, maybe he might be the only guy in the universe that is like 240 and has wheels like that. I mean, he ran away from that whole secondary, never got tired. I don't know any other player in football that can do that.
And man, poor who was that safety back there?
Mike Hyde. He made a tackle though. Kudos to him.
Yeah. Man. I mean, that guy needs some sort of bonus in his contract or something that, now we have to have a special stipulation here that if I have to tackle Derrick Henry in any game one-on-one in a secondary, that I get, an extra $1 million right there, because I would have made it try to look as much as possible like somebody broke my ankles or something on that. That's not a favorable spot to be in, and kudos for him to lowering his head and doing it. That could not feel good.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a health insurance clause in there for Derrick Henry. Tackles are not covered by your plan because that guy's going to hurt you. But kudos to Hyde for making that play. But yeah, Harris, I think, is playing. Well, I get, should they run the ball in that second out? And I understand why Ben wanted to throw that, but at least for Claypool, if you're going to push off, at least catch the ball in bounds. So if they don't call it, then
that too.
Because he caught the ball, but he got out of bounds, so that's just poor awareness. So at least if you're going to catch it or push off, be in bounds, so if they don't call it, if they miss it, then it's going to be a big play. But yeah, that one was a big play in that game, negatively for Pittsburgh.
And look, and our very own Jonathan Heitritter did a good job, I think, yesterday on highlighting some of the things that don't show up on the stat sheet with Chase Claypool, but we need to see more. We talk about on the other side of football, Devin Bush and all. We need to get back to seeing Chase Claypool make some more impactful plays, I think. Especially Ben loves to throw those 50-50 balls down the sideline there. And I think a year ago when was the game against Philly?
It was week 4, week 5. Somewhere around there.
We were really singing everybody's singing the praises of Chase Claypool, especially halfway through the season, because you looked at kind of his down the field explosive catches that he had, and then how many of those were contested catches, and then how many pass interference penalties that he had drawn as well too. We're not seeing that same kind of production right now. So how much is that on the quarterback? You go back to that one against Denver over there on the sideline. That thing hit him right on the coconut there. Hard not to call that a drop, really. And I know there was some earlier game situations, some of those balls in the end zone. The ball placement could have been better. But you got a guy that his specialty in college was contorting his body and making those contested catches with his back to the goalpost. And he hadn't had enough of those this season. That's all I'm saying. We need to see more out of Chase Claypool moving forward. Yeah,
I agree. Actually, couldn't have been week 4 last year because that was Steelers' weird bye week. It's nice to have a normal bye week. I'm gonna take that for granted. But no, I agree. Claypool's got to be more consistent and play to the physical tools that he is so gifted to have. I agree 100% there. So offensively, I thought Gentry was interesting to use in that game against some guys like Carlos Dunlap and some other bigger defensive ends. I thought he played pretty well overall. Not great, but pretty well. And Dan Moore out in space on some of those screen plays. It's been an asset. I think he's a good, easy mover, and it's been more effective out in the screen game, the receiver screen game specifically than Villanueva was last year, where he kind of struggled to get out in space.
Absolutely. So, overall, look, they did enough offensively to win that game. You would like to see them. Matt Canner talked about identity and all like that. I don't even know what that means anymore. I mean, what does offensive identity mean?
Yeah, it means different things to different people, but I do think it's important to have a philosophy as an OC and to have a plan of who your team is trying to be. Because if you don't have any sort of plan, you're just kind of working without that in mind, at least. And I think it's just harder to be an effective team or to evaluate yourself.
I mean, when is the last time that we've talked about a Steelers team offense having an identity?
Yeah, I mean, every team has an identity. It's just how good of an identity do you have? Some better than others.
What is the Steelers' offensive identity right now?
Yeah, it's still where they are or where they want to be. What are you asking?
Yes.
Where they currently. I mean, where they want to be is a team that can run the ball effectively and be in third manageable. But every team wants to be there. Where they are is, how do you want to describe that? I don't even know the best way to describe that. It's a team that is improving. It's a team that is. I don't know the best way to describe it.
It's an offense that's trying to survive.
Yeah.
Interceptable throws and penalties.
Yeah, it's been a bumpy ride for this offense. It's one that relies on more of the short pass game in terms of being more efficient with that. They are throwing the ball a fair amount. You pointed that out yesterday, deep, but they've not been efficient.
But that's never been the problem, though, right? I mean, we've tried to make sure that, coming off the whole PFF, Ben won't throw deep or can't throw deep and all like that. It's not for the lack of trying. I think that gets lost in a lot of this there. And right now, I think I pointed out yesterday, Ben is third in the NFL entering this week in deep pass attempts of more than 20 yards down the field. Did you clutch your pearls when you heard that number? Do you wear pearls?
I'm guessing, yeah, my pearls that I had on, my precious jewels. But I'm sure the national media did. Actually, they probably didn't even see that.
They don't know it. Yeah, they don't know it.
Yeah, but no, I did not.
The problem is completing those. I think he only has 8 completions within those. That's always been the crux of what I've been getting at with him in the deep ball. It's not that he's not attempting to throw it. It's just the completion percentage related to it. Not just this year, not just last year, not just the injury, the few snaps he played. I mean, it goes all the way back to at least 2018 until he's able to hit 3 or 4 of these a game. I think you're going to see the same thing. This offense seems so. You just cannot dink and dunk the football down the field and running successful is fine. You absolutely have to have that, especially in this offense the way it is right now. Yeah, you absolutely have to have that. But you're not going to consistently be able to put drives in the end zone for points if you don't have chunk plays along the way throughout the game there. And this offense is not getting enough of those. They're having to manufacture them from jets, to Deontay runs. How else are they, and down the field kind of side. Yeah. What's that?
A PI call is how they're getting some big plays to get one.
Unless we start seeing more of that, I mean, look, they're winning. That's good. I mean, the fact that this team's 3-3 right now is, I think, fairly, borderline incredible. To be honest with you, the way they played in those first 4 games overall there. But until this team has some sort of a deep threat identity, that you better not single up on the outside. You better not play. Better not play that cover 1 against us, single high type stuff. Then, it's going to be 20, 22 points a game, which a lot of times is probably not going to be enough.
Right. And I don't think that deep threat is going to change that much this season because it hasn't changed in several seasons. And I don't expect it to magically get a whole lot better, during the course of one season, maybe one game, but multiple games, probably not. And so that's the concern there. And not to poo-poo this team winning, because a win is a win and you're happy this team's 3-3. But I mean, they barely beat Denver and Seattle. Both those teams came back, and Denver almost tied the game, and Seattle did tie the game. And that was against the Seattle team without their quarterback and running back. And so what are you going to do when you're facing some of the better teams in football? when you're struggling to get past. And again, you're happy that you won, but you're struggling to get past Denver and Seattle, two teams that were not playing great ball.
No matter how you divvy this thing up in wins or whatnot, Ben Roethlisberger right now has a completed air yard distance on the season, according to Next Gen Stats, of 4.4 yards. Okay, and here are the quarterbacks with enough. Let's see here. Here are the quarterbacks with that qualify on the chart here, and it looks to be about, I don't know. It says minimum 53 pass attempts in total. So the qualified quarterbacks on this list, there is only one with a lower completed air yard distance than Ben Roethlisberger. Any guess of who that is?
Oh, God. I should know this, but it's not coming to mind. So who is it?
Jared Goff.
Oh, I would have not guessed Jared Goff. Okay, that's interesting.
And you want to know how bad that is? I mean, it makes Ben Roethlisberger look like who
Herbert or Brady or Rodgers.
Lamar Jackson leads the league. Who would have known at 8.1? 8.1 completed air yard distance. Now how many attempts does Lamar have? 194 overall, which is kind of middle of the pack type situation there. I kudos to him. I didn't see that. A lot of those are throw it deep. Here's the other thing. Why is that number so big for Lamar Jackson now?
They got some big play threats, and Hollywood Brown's playing well, and Sammy Watkins, when he's healthy, they got some vertical threats, and Mark Andrews is a beast of a tight end, of course.
Yeah, they got a guy in Hollywood Brown that's got I'd like to call old crap speed, and what have we said a few times already this season that the Steelers sorely miss, Yeah,
the Mike Wallace, the true burner. What was Jared Goff's number?
3.7.
0.7, and Ben's at 4.4, so. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how it's possible, 3.7. But, the Steelers, that number for Ben has to improve.
Right. I mean, you like it or not, that number, if you're listening to this and you want any hope of the Steelers not only making the playoffs, but going anywhere in the playoffs, you have got to see that 4.4 number going up.
What's the rest of the AFC North? Do you have that for Lamar's obviously the top at what you said, 8.1, whereas Burrow, that number's probably decent for Burrow and Baker, maybe not as much for Baker, but I'd be curious to see how that stands up.
Baker is at 5.8.
Okay.
Burrow's 6.5.
Okay, so I kind of had that outlined well. So, I mean, those are the numbers you have to compete with, especially Burrow and Lamar.
Right, and why is Burrow's number so high?
Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Had to throw the deep ball, too. Yeah, that burner type of receiver.
Now, is it necessarily that because look on a few of these Lamar Jackson throws that have been completed, it's hard to go and criticize a completed deep ball, but a lot of them then just go get it, brother, and they go get it, and that's what you do in the NFL a lot of times, right? Especially
that's the value of having Hollywood Brown. You can trust him that he's going to go get that ball.
Right. So. You know what I'm doing if I'm the Steelers right now, if I'm Kevin Colbert, and if I think if I can get, during this bye week right now, I start looking at all these practice squads right now. Honestly, I'm serious in this. And I say, is there anybody out there that, go deep guy,
Okay.
Because, I mean, who do they have on their team that can do that other than Deontay Johnson? Unless you totally want to start making Deontay Johnson be more of that guy, which I suppose is possible. But even Deontay Johnson's not crap speed. He's not going to run away from all these guys.
Yeah, obviously James Washington was billed as a vertical type, but he's not the 4-3 guy. He's the 4-5 combat catcher, lobster cracker, vertical threat. And Claypool's supposed to be that guy. He just hasn't. It hasn't all come together for him, obviously.
Look, I never saw that guy.
Right.
My thoughts on him. I thought he was a third. That's why I thought he was a third round graded wide receiver, because he was not that vertical burner.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not. He's not going to run away from most corners in this league.
Yeah, which is just crazy because he's supposed to be like this long strider, 4.42 physical freak. And again, he doesn't always quite play to those tools.
Now, can he occasionally get on top of guys and stack them? Yeah, but it takes a damn near perfect pass to drop it in the bucket, a la Denver last year, those kind of things. Whereas you see guys like Jamar Chase and Hollywood Brown, I mean, those guys get some separation, do they not?
Yeah, they do for sure.
So if I'm Kevin Colbert, I'm looking around at all these practice squads right now. But once again, how do you justify bringing in a guy off of somebody else's team's practice squad and implement him into your offense at this point and not have the red light go off when he's on the field on top of it? Oh, here comes so-and-so. They're going to try to go over the top deep on this. Play cover 3. Just keep the lid on it.
Yeah, that's tough to do. And then Ben, of course, has to get the football there as well. And Deontay wins vertically last week, and Ben underthrows it. And you could argue that Deontay's got to make that catch, but that should have been a better ball from Ben. So obviously the quarterback has to do his job even in those situations.
Even if you traded for somebody right now, all right, for another team, who could you trade for that you could bring in, and implement into your offense to be that guy? I'm serious here. This team seriously lacks the deep Mike Wallace guy right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've always talked about how that's always been a component of the Steelers' best teams, the Mike Wallace, the Nate Washingtons of the world, those kinds of guys that weren't necessarily Wallace was a pretty good player, but weren't the marquee number one receiver in football kind of thing. But they played that really key role of just that burner, especially Nate Washington, who was the number 3 receiver on that team, but could win vertically time and time again.
I just don't know how. And once again, I mean, the fact that this team's 3-3, I think I think that needs to be praised for sure. Okay, and part of my terrible take yesterday focused on, hey, they're 3-3 now. You never know how some of these things are going to play out. Now you're going to potentially have a severely wounded, quarterbackless Cleveland Browns team up next after your own bye week. All right, and then you get 2 teams in the Bears and the Lions that, I mean, at least from where we sit at right now, those are both should be winnable games for the Steelers, right? I mean, this team gets to 6-3 after these next 3 games, then theoretically, and it doesn't always play out this way, but the team could theoretically go 4-4 in their last 8 games and be a 10-win team and probably be in the playoffs.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it'll be competitive AFC, and that down the stretch schedule is brutal, but that makes these upcoming games all the more important to win, to capitalize on them.
Will a 10-win Steelers team get in the playoffs?
Yes, I think in some capacity. Maybe it would be wild card, but I think they would get in.
Okay, so I mean, you've really got a good opportunity now here because of the way this thing stacks and injuries and whatnot to get to 6-3. In my opinion, now you've made it this far, you damn sure better get to 6-3 with the way this thing is stacking up there. But back to my original point here, we have got to see Roethlisberger's completed air yard numbers go up, and I'm not so sure we are.
Yeah, and that's a big problem because in the AFCs of the world with the Mahomes and the Allens and Lamars and even Burrows of the world, 4.4 is not going to cut it. It's not. It might get you somewhere decent, but not where you want to go.
And here's the other thing. It's about time for me to really start harping on adjusted net yards per passing attempt numbers and differentials and all like that, because like it or not, the stats don't lie. The historical aspect of both completed air yards and then, the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat on both sides of the football, that just does not lie. And all right, we'll give them till week 8, okay? Normally, I'd like to cut it off and use week 7, but, there's enough statistical historical value when it comes to week 8 as well, too. We have got to see the Steelers' pass defense play a little bit better, and we've got to see the Steelers' pass offense get better in these next 2 games specifically. And it sets up where you would think it's possible, but they at least have got to get this differential backed up, even if it's 0.1 to the positive. If they don't, history says there's no way for this team. And on top of that, where else was I going to go on this? Anyway, carry on. So whatever your next
I was
point
just saying, those were the key numbers. Those are the key numbers we'll be watching and definitely talking about, I'm sure, many more times throughout the next several weeks of the season.
Don't say it like that.
What do you mean? No,
okay. I know people don't like me harping on those numbers, but they are. It's hard to argue with a statistical. Oh, I know. I was going to add. What about your turnover number?
Yeah, well, they ain't getting to 25, whatever number I put at this year. It probably doesn't look like it's going to happen unless they blow up one game. The turnovers need to see more of them. And certainly they had their chances against Seattle. They forced so many fumbles in the game, and they recovered the most crucial one, of course. But you want to see more interceptions, more of the splash plays. That's going to help out an offense. It's still trying to put it all together.
What was that? And was that number just flat turnovers? Or it wasn't differential.
No, it was just turnovers. And because usually if you're forcing 20, 25 turnovers, your turnover differential is generally good on the positive side of things.
Right. And where are they at now in takeaways for this team?
I can look it up. They don't have as many as they should. I'll tell you that much off the top here.
Hold on here. Let me get my rankings. Takeaways.
Buffalo leads the league with 16. Pittsburgh has 5.
And they're tied for 26 with Tennessee. And here's something that's encouraging maybe. Cleveland only has 4.
Yeah, and Baltimore only has 6. And the Bengals also have 6. So the AFC North is not taking the football away.
All right. Once again, I think now's the time during this bye week to draw the line in the sand when it comes to a lot of aspects of this team. And how they come out of this bye, these next 2 to 3 games, I think is going to tell us the story of the 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well said. So flip over to the defense of the All-22 from the Seahawks game. What did you see aside from Cam Hayward and TJ Watt doing very Cam Hayward and TJ Watt-like things?
Yeah, just a missed tackle is something that Tomlin and Butler talked about, and hitting the tackle sled this week, and that really stuck out, as did the chunk runs. And kudos to the Seahawks for mixing it up on 3rd and 7 and running the tackle guard wrap. The Steelers obviously didn't see that coming. So kudos to them. But it wasn't just that one play. It'd be one thing if that was the only play that we were talking about. Unfortunately, it's not. And Keith Butler pointed to defensive line playing the biggest part in that, not so much the linebackers. Okay. I see a little bit of that. I haven't gone through that side of football maybe as quite as detailed as you have. I'm probably going to spend a lot of time on the defensive side of football today. I know you have. So what did you see defensive side of football other than missed tackling?
Yeah, too many of those for sure. I think Tom made a good point about leverage and understanding where your help's at and things like that kind of compounded the issue of missed tackles. That 3rd down in the first half allowed to Homer, that long catch and run, or that short catch and long run was a great example of guys not doing a good job with leverage. But with the run D, I think there's a lot of truth in what Butler has to say with the defensive line, not to absolve the linebackers entirely because they certainly should not be absolved, but guys were stepping the wrong way. Isaiah Buggs at one play stepped right initially stepped to his right initially on a run that was going away from him. Chris Wormley stepped, I think, the wrong way initially once the next play. And so you had those issues where guys aren't getting to their gap in time because they're stepping wrong, they're false stepping initially. So that was one thing, compounded with the missed tackles and things like that. So I thought just some of the gap integrity from the defensive line, and there were some lighter boxes as well. There were some high, more too high kind of looks as well that weren't helping, but I do think it starts up front with a defensive line that needs to step correctly against some of those more zone runs.
It did really feel like they were trying more than anything not to keep a lid on that thing.
Right, 100%. Because I think that was what Tomlin had said at halftime to the reporter, that they knew, or they felt like they were going to just take shots with Lockett and Metcalf to try to get back in that game, and they didn't. They just went with a ground game. Kudos to Seattle for staying the course. Right,
and it does say a lot about the Seahawks that down what they were down at the time, that they said, look, we got to come out here and run this football to get back into this, and they did.
Yeah, and they ran it effectively, and they got back in that game because of it. So, yeah, I mean, there were multiple issues on the touchdown that Alex Collins had. Terrell Edmonds super late with his eye, super late to react to that run, and couldn't fill the alley well. And Collins goes over the goal line. Devin Bush getting run out of gaps. Again, guy stepping the wrong way, missed tackle. So there's a lot of things, obviously. But I think when Butler talks about the defensive line not doing their job, I think that's an accurate statement.
Okay, what else do we have? Special teams. Did you get a chance to, and I think we got an email somewhere about this. That whole thing near the goal line there. Did you get a chance to look closer at that?
The whole thing near the goal line?
Yeah, with the whole, it looked like maybe it was going to be a safety or something there.
With the touchback on the touchback.
Right.
A safety because Millett picked up the football. Is that what the question was?
Yeah, or why it wasn't a touchback, I should say. Or turnover in general. I'm trying to remember what actual the ruling was.
Yeah, it was
on the
punt
field.
in the end zone that was the Seattle tried to down it at the 1, but it was ruled a touchback because I think the player had got carried into he hadn't fully stopped and he got carried into the end zone and it became a touchback that way. I think it was a question maybe about why Millett picked up that football. As soon as the kicking team touches that football, the defense, the return team can pick it up with no consequences, even if they fumble it.
The muff's out there, yeah.
The play becomes dead. So you cannot turn the football over. You think about this was a couple of years ago. The Raiders return man, I believe Dwayne Harris, had a 99-yard return against Denver off of that, where the ball was touched but never downed, and so it's still the play's not over. And so Harris picked up the football, and even if you fumble it, it just goes back to where the ball was down initially or touched down initially. And so that's why Millett picked up the football. If that's what the question is, I guess we'll find out in the email portion of the show.
Yeah. And are you ready for that portion of the show now?
Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else from the AFC North? I know the Browns are all beat up. The Ravens losing Ronnie Stanley for the season. So it'll be no Villanueva versus Watt this year. It'll be Villanueva versus Alex Highsmith. And so that's a big loss for Baltimore.
Hey, Steelers fans have no reason to point to, but the injuries, because the fact that the Ravens have done what they've done this year with the injuries that they've had, nobody should be using injuries as an excuse for the 2021 Steelers.
Yeah, no team has been beat up more than Baltimore, and they're flying high.
And look, Alejandro Villanueva is not going to win All-Pro this year or go to the Pro Bowl, but as I stated many weeks ago, that flip back over to the left side's where he belongs, and he's given him just enough over there on that side. Now, it obviously helps to have a kind of quarterback like Lamar Jackson at the mobility when it comes to that, but that signing really has become kind of huge for them overall, I think, when it comes to Villanueva. And now Ronnie Stanley out for the rest of the season, and they've had some other offensive linemen, I think, go down at points here. So it really speaks volumes to where they're at right now. And look, they came back against the Colts team a couple of weeks ago, and the fact that they're sitting here 5-1 now really speaks a lot for I didn't see it.
Yeah, kudos to them. And yeah, I never understood why they wanted to play Villanueva on the right side to basically replace Orlando Brown Jr. But I think him back at left tackle was the best thing for him personally, at least.
All right, let's get to some emails here. Bryce writes in, before the season I had us going 4-2 at the bye, but at 3-3 he says he'll take it nonetheless. 2 questions. He says, for the Steelers team that lacks a wide receiver with blazing speed, what do you think are the best schemes for them to use with the personnel they have to manufacture chunk plays of 15 yards or more? For the sake of this question, let's leave out 50-50 balls that Ben likes to throw to the outside. So what is the best way for this team to create chunk plays without the 50-50 balls down the sideline?
Well, you took out about 90% of the ideas I was going to bring to the table, based on how this offense currently functions. I mean, you can do it in a million different ways. It's some of that's yak stuff, some of that's by design. Obviously, I would like to see things schemed up a bit more, have more concepts, being able to set up plays a bit better, run one thing, and then kind of base something off of it later in the game with the same look. So, I mean, there's no one good answer to offer right now. There's a million ways that you can do it.
I don't think structurally from a Mills or a Dagger, just doesn't seem like you're going to see a lot of that period with this. I think you reach more into kind of your off script type of stuff, maybe your wheels and your double moves and your bend fake pumps. But the thing is, man, you have so much you better hit them. You better hit them because because you just don't have the ability, I don't think, to take the lid off things like with the rugs or with how some of these other teams do it. So I think you really got to really scout deep into what opposing defenses have given up, not only this season but maybe in previous seasons with some explosive plays like the Steelers did with those Jets from the Rams and the Seahawks from a couple years ago. And you're going to have to really manufacture chunk plays for sure. And you better hit those wheels and you better hit those catch short, run longs. But it's so hard to do over 11 games left in the season, though, to manufacture those stuff. And if you say we can't count the 50-50 balls on the outside, you really are taking away a lot, I think.
Mm-hmm. I will say they've been running that Yankee concept quite a bit lately, but it'll be a 3-man route combination instead of a 2-man. They'll have a clear out route by number 1 running vertically, and then run the Yankee, which are just basically 2 long over crossing patterns. They haven't really hit yet, but they've been trying it. So I think that's one thing they're trying to work on off a lot of play action as well. That Yankee concept with that number 1 on a clear out.
I think you need to try some stuff straight up, like cover 3. Beaters up the seam with Freiermuth. If you get into, you'll see some sort of situations where you stress that middle of the field safety there. Freiermuth and look, kudos to Pat Freiermuth for catching everything that's come his way, right? But Alex, if you're 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and I throw you the football, how many of those are you going to catch?
Of
100 of them,
Last year we saw him drop a lot of those. I'm just happy they're making those catches.
I'm not trying to discount the high catch percentage of Pat Freiermuth, but let's put some context to it too, right? He's not being asked to catch football much past 5 yards past the line of scrimmage right now. So I think that's something that you need to maybe look at moving forward as well too, is can you push the football deeper down the field to not only Freiermuth, but Ebron as well. But, I mean, obviously Freiermuth's probably going to start becoming a bigger portion of this offense. That's one way I would think that may – now, is that going to be an explosive play at 20 yards? I don't know. But, that's one way to maybe to get some chunk plays there.
Yeah, that goes back to the idea of this team needing to throw the ball down the middle of the field more often, which they just have not done for the longest time. And so that's one way to do it. And if you see that, then you're going to see an increase of those throws in that deeper middle of the field.
Plain and simple, this offense, if it's going to have more success and move to that next level in the remaining 11 games, they've got to have more chunk plays, period, in the story, because leaning on the run will only going to get you so far on top of it there. So that we'll see.
Let me ask you this just real quick: what is more important for this team, to run the ball efficiently or to have the chunk plays? I know the answer. You want to have both, and you probably need both. What do you think is the most important?
I don't mean to be a jokester here, but I think it is both. The way this offense is built with the quarterback that they have, with the personnel that they have, I really think you have to have both in there for this offense. You're not going to be able to do anything if you're not running the football successfully, because once again, we can't on a week in, week out basis, I don't think, be talking about Steelers wins with Roethlisberger throwing the football more than 40 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so part of that, to take up that slack, is going to have to be not only running, but running successfully on top of it. Now, do you want to factor in, passes that are runs, the whole thing that nobody wants to talk about, the RPO aspect? Okay, to some degree, that's got to be there as well too there. But I think specifically with this offense, because it's not a quick strike offense, that you have to have both of those. I think you have to have 3 to 4 passing explosive plays a game, and then the run success rates on top of it. It's the only way I think that you're going to talk about this team making any kind of a dent moving forward. Mm-hmm. I mean, are they going to maybe win an occasional game or two with Ben throwing the football 45 times a game? Yeah, I think it's possible depending on who you play. But on a week-in, week-out basis, you have to have a 50% successful run rate with this offense, and you have to have probably 3 to 4 explosive passing plays, I think, period.
Yeah, I think that's true. If you made me choose, though, to answer my own question, I think the run game is still more important because I think they've won more games with a run game and no deep passing game than they have with a deep passing game and no run game. This team has to run the football effectively to win games.
Right, fair enough, and especially if your defense can continue to make strides on the other end and not take 24 points to win a ball game. You run successful early to hopefully give yourself a chance to run successful late.
Right, and that's been, I think, shown in the last couple of games.
Right. He says, I didn't think I'd be asking this at the beginning of the season, but does Loudermilk need to see more snaps? Seems like he is like a more traditional two-gap defensive end that isn't easily moved at the point attack. I don't know what you're saying there because he has been moved a little bit. He's playing good. The fact that he's getting the snaps that he's getting right now. The thing with Loudermilk moving past this season is he just has to grow more into that role. He has to get stronger. But I mean, do you really, two gap and defensive ends in the Steelers system? I mean, that's a dinosaur now. That's Aaron Smith. Bless him. Nobody did it as good as he did. And unfortunately, there's not stats to keep up with that. But I'm worried less about Loudermilk becoming a two-gap or wanting Loudermilk to become a two-gap defensive end than I am him just not being moved at the point of attack and being able to be a penetrator as a one-gap guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the joke I had when they picked Loudermilk when he was coming out earlier this year was he'd have been a third-round pick in 2006. Like, he'd been a great pick 10, 15 years ago. It's a little bit tougher of a fit today. Yeah, 8 snaps. Was a little surprising to see that on the lighter end of things on Sunday. I will say I'm going to post a clip here. I saw it late last night going through the All-22. He had, to me, his best rep ever as a Steeler so far. Not that there's been a ton of those reps, but he had one late in that game. He actually with two-gap, got the back to bounce, and then followed him and got off the block and made the tackle. It was a great play by Loudermilk. So some improvement there, but it is an awkward fit, kind of an old school two gapper in a new age one gap scheme.
Right, but he's got to become a better one gapper, right?
He does, but how much better is he going to be? He ain't going to be a great athlete at any point in his career, I don't ever think.
Well, he's not going to have a long career as a two gapper.
Well, I think it just captures ceiling. I think you can have a role as like a backup rotational run stuffer kind of a guy. I think there's still value for that, but it's going to cap like what your involvement's going to be in passing situations, and if you're ever going to be like a full-time starter, which I don't think he'll ever be. Are
you happy where he's at based on where you going back to where the pick was made and the whole, man, could they have got him a round or two earlier? Did they really have to trade up to go get him? Where are you on all that? He's played more, and obviously injuries have played a role with that. Stephon Tuitt and Alualu and all like that. Where are you on where he's at right now, based on the snaps?
I'll take it. It's a little bit better than where I thought he would be. I was very much questioning and down on the pick when they initially made it. I still think there's a question about what his ceiling is going to be. I think it's a low ceiling. He's a low ceiling kind of a guy, but I think he's doing a good job.
To Bryce's question, do you want to see Loudermilk play more snaps?
Not in particular. I'm not pining for it. I want to see this group get healthy. I want to see Stephon Tuitt out there a little more. But Wormley's doing a decent job, and Hayward's obviously balling out. So, but he may have to, though. I mean, Bugs, what's going on with Bugs? We have no idea. He's got that. I think he's in Groin Club, Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens.
Let's see. Jonathan Glick. Thanks for the continued great work. I'm curious what I am missing regarding Juju. He had a great first couple years, but the last few post-AB have been pedestrian. He runs short routes and doesn't seem to have the speed anymore to get much separation on these routes. I understand he can get a tough 3 to 5 yards, but isn't that an area where you should be able to lean on a tight end? The idea of having a player capable of producing big plays is appealing, and Juju just hasn't been that. I don't watch the All-22, and I'm going by the eye test from game days, so I'm curious, what does he do that makes you both talk about him as an elite wide receiver? Have we ever talked about Juju as being an elite wide receiver, Alex?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever used the word elite, but I don't want to take for granted the plays he makes underneath, the toughness that he has, the hands that he has. It's not his fault that he's running a bunch of short, routes. That's just what they're calling for him, but he does it so well, and I just praise him for being the go-to guy in those big third down situations. How many clutch third down catches has this guy had on 3rd and 4 over the middle over the last couple seasons? So, you don't want to overlook the weight of that 3rd and 4 catch.
I've always viewed Juju's potential upside as being that of, say, a Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, it's a good comp.
Okay, and if you play up to that, then you get that kind of top. Where's Kupp now? Top 10, 15? I kind of had Juju as that market value heading into this past offseason. He obviously came up way short of that. Let me pull up the wide receiver here rankings.
Yeah, I think top 10 for Kupp sounds about right.
And let's see here. Kupp is at the 17. Seemed like it was at the 15.75 million, and he's not top 10.
Was he ever top 10 when he signed the deal? That's probably a harder question to determine right now. Where does he rank right now? Is he like top 15 right now?
I think he's like 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16th.
Okay, he might have been a little bit higher when he signed that contract, but yeah, that's a good comp for.
All right. So, but within that, he's not a guy. I don't think that other teams would ever think we got to go into this game, make sure we take away Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, he's not at that level like a Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs or someone like that. But man, when you need a clutch play, this team turned to 19, and he made it more often than not.
I think we saw where he's best at, and that's being a compliment, a guy that can make you pay for someone trying to take away a guy like Antonio Brown, that kind of guy. And I don't know. We'll obviously see what happens after this season and all like that. But I don't think either one of us ever really have tabbed Juju as an elite wide receiver.
No, I haven't used the word elite with him. He's not. He's never been. And he probably never will be. But I think what he does well, he does really well, and it's a unique skill set that most guys don't have. Is that 6'1", 220 pounder that is so physical and tough, and just a matchup nightmare along the interior. Within
all that, I hope they do re-sign Juju for and can fit him into this offense moving forward. Whether or not that happens, we'll see. Alex writes in, "Hi, David and Alex. First off, I just want to say that you guys in this podcast have often been my only pocket of sanity since the pandemic began. Thanks for that." Well, all right. My question for both of you as we head into this bye week, what makes you the most optimistic about the Steelers moving forward for the rest of the season, and what makes you the most pessimistic? My optimism is that with so many young players on offense, they can become a much better unit after the bye week, especially if Dotson gets his mojo back and Deontay steps up to become a real number one wide receiver. He says, my pessimism is, and it hurts to say this, is no matter how much the young players improve, Ben is simply mediocre quarterback at this point, and that's too difficult to overcome in the modern NFL. Great points, Alex. Alex Kozora, how would you like to address that?
I like this Alex guy, Dave, although I will say if we're the beacon of sanity, then there's some big problems, but we appreciate that. I kind of tend to agree. The optimism side is that it's a young group that's growing, an offensive line that will hopefully continue to get better, a team that has not played its best football yet. I think we can all agree on that, but the pessimism is, this team's last 2 wins, like I said, are wins, but they were nail biters against some below average teams, especially Seattle working without Russell Wilson. So what's going to happen when you're facing the daunting part of the schedule late in the season, the Clevelands, the Baltimores, the KCs, even Minnesota, teams like that? You're going to need more firepower and more juice and less margin of error against those much better teams. And so that's the worry. Does this team have the overall firepower to compete in a world where you got to score points to win?
I'll have two optimisms for you. One being we have seen this run game have the successful run rate at the standards that I think that it needs to be at to help you win some football games. So after the start this team had, the offensive line, and look, the offensive line is far from perfect, but there is some continuity happening. This is leading to successful run rates that are obviously acceptable. So that's one optimism there, and one would hope that if this unit stays healthy, that will at least maintain the rate that it is now, maybe get a little bit better. So that's one. The other optimism is, boy, if Alex Highsmith, Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, and the Melvin all stay healthy, that is something to contend with, as we saw this past week here. Alex Highsmith is progressing nicely. All of it, give me all of it. With those four guys alone, they can really impact a game if you're in the game late in the fourth quarter, period. So that's optimism there. My pessimism goes back, unfortunately, on Ben. You got to be able to complete balls down the field on a more consistent basis. That completed air yard distance absolutely must come up if you want to see this team. Look, I went into this knowing that could potentially be a problem, and however, I had this team going 9-8 and sneaking into the playoffs. I don't think they could do anything past that. But if your hope is that this team makes a deep playoff run, it's Ben pushing the football down the field more, which is something we've talked about the last 2.5 seasons or whatever, has got to happen. I'm not convinced it can happen. All right, so I will gladly put my foot in my mouth if that number is able to come up by a full yard and a half. Okay, but I think that's where my pessimism is at the quarterback, and there's too many turnover worthy plays. Luckily it didn't bite him in these last two games, but where is it going to balance itself out at if you keep making those kind of throws?
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's more than fair, Dave.
Obviously, I'll be back into Dave hates Ben Roethlisberger, doesn't think he should go to the Hall of Fame probably talk, which is ludicrous, but that's where I am on this. Michael Galapo writes in, do the Steelers have a Hall of Famer in every position? If not, how close are they to that? And are there any NFL teams that have accomplished that? Thanks, Dave and Alex. Oh, geez. If they don't have a Hall of Famer at every position, where are they missing one at, would be the question.
Offensive tackle? They don't have an offensive tackle in the Hall, right?
Okay.
Their best tackles are like John Kolb and Tunch, Marvell Smith, Frank Verishone. I don't think none of those guys are in the Hall.
Okay.
Trying to think, obviously, like kicker and punter.
Right.
Feel technical on you. They have most in terms of do any teams do? I have no idea. The two teams who have a shot are the teams with the most Hall of Famers. So I look at Chicago and Green Bay. If there's any two teams that have every single position, it's going to be one of those two teams.
Okay, fair enough. They obviously the hall is full of Steelers, that's for sure. Let's see. The Wave, Michael Bednars. Local Steelers Twitter media has been ripping apart the fans that were at the game Sunday. The stadium was performing a wave during what seemed to be a serious injury. I, for one, can acknowledge that the crowd has been insane the last two home games with the passion we're bringing. Do you guys think the criticism is fair, or is the bringing back the loud, passionate, rabid home field advantage that has been missing at Heinz for some time almost validate what may have been viewed as a classless or disrespectful situation? Yeah, not being there, I don't know. I know there was a lot of talk about that. I don't know if it's just people being kind of agnostic to what was going on and not knowing the gravity of it. Mm-hmm. I would tend to think that maybe that was it, but I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't see any, pictures of it or video of it really enough to pay attention to that.
Yeah, I would lean with that, Dave. That I don't think people were aware of how serious the injury was. But I would not. The idea of it's just the crowd being rowdy would not be an excuse for the fans doing that. But I think they didn't realize that Taylor was seriously hurt the way that he appeared to be.
That's the way that I took it. Was they just did not know the gravity of the situation, and people now with their phones, and I mean, how experienced of a crowd was it? I don't know. Hopefully people did not see that and say, the heck with him, let's just do the wave,
Yeah, I don't think people were even paying attention to.
I don't know, but I'll tell you this: on the decline of Western civilization scale right now, it seems to go backwards by the week. I'll just put that, but that's just old man Dave shaking his fist at the cloud there. Interesting thing coming up here on I Killiard here on James Washington. I Killiard evidently talked to the media today, so let's use this final portion of this podcast to discuss this answer, Alex. I Killiard was asked how much of an asset James Washington can be in the passing game, and he was incredibly expansive on what led to Washington's limited reps on Sunday. Injuries and the recoveries in the position group were a significant factor in the division of labor. This comes via Brooke Pryor of ESPN. Huge. A lot of the blame has to come to me. I have to sit up there to take it, and because that's what it is, especially that last game. I know everybody's asking why or looking for reasons or a scapegoat. You can point the finger at me for that. We had two men coming off of soft tissue injury. Ray is Juju's primary backup. I was really, really comfortable with Cody White backing him up at the F spot. F obviously being the flanker spot, right?
The slot
spot. So the initial idea was to trade basically a series or two with each guy at the Z position, meaning Chase and James. And Chase's hamstring held up a lot better than I expected. With James having limited reps during the week at the F, limited practice time period, it was a little safer for me mentally in a game situation to stick with Chase out there and let him go at the Z and not to throw James to the Wolves at the F spot, and Ray handled it relatively well. Going forward, I've addressed that in the room personally, and those men know and understand that I'll do a better job. James will have a better opportunity to get more reps during practice at the F. I find that pretty amazing. And that was me interjecting there. And you'll see a cleaner rotation with all 4 or 5 guys playing. We'll do a better job going forward. Hey, kudos for I Killiard for giving such a great answer there. That adds some clarity there. Now let's talk about what he said.
Yeah, that's a much better answer than Matt Canada saying, we love James, he'll play. So thank you for that, Coach Hilliard. Yeah, I mean, so basically what Hilliard's saying is Washington got limited time at the slot during the week, and Chase ended up playing more snaps than he expected. The hamstring held up better than he anticipated. So there really wasn't a role for Washington to rotate into because Claypool was playing so much, and James really didn't have a lot of snaps at the slot position, the F position, during the week.
All right, so that means that all passes the sniff test now, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that I see no faults or issues with that commentary.
Right, it certainly passes it more for me now, saying that something didn't add up right there. But okay, we're fine with that. Now, what do you think about let's go to moving forward here. What do you think about Washington at the F in the slot?
Yeah, it's not ideal for him, but if you can mix and match a little bit and maybe he gets more reps there and improves a little bit, I mean, you got to play somebody in the slot, and if they want to keep Claypool
I'd play
on the
Chase.
outside,
I'd play Claypool on the outside. I'd let Washington try to do what. Now, look, do I think they should move those guys around? Yes.
Right. And Claypool played in the slot some last week, right? I mean,
like 14, 16 snaps,
okay.
I think. But I mean,
Ray,
but Ray was like 40.
Right. Sure, I understand that. But the point is, I mean, those guys will all rotate. Seems to be Ike's answer.
We'll see if Uncle Dave's wrong here, but I think the best case scenario for this is to put Chase more in that big slot role and have him assume more of the Juju type snaps, and let Washington play more in the Z type role. Now, obviously, you can mix and match some of these guys, like I said there. But personally, I think that's the best course of action. But I mean, Ike Hilliard's a wide receivers coach, and they obviously have their jobs for a reason there. It sounds like we could see more James in the slot moving forward here if he stays healthy.
Yeah, just to clarify, because I know some people don't always know what X and Z and F means. X is the weak side, usually the backside receiver. The Z is the play side receiver to the strength of the formation. So if you have three receivers to one side, the guy furthest to the right is going to be the Z receiver, and F is the slot receiver, what they call the slot spot in Pittsburgh.
Right, and
they've been doing that for a long time and calling that the F spot for a long time.
Right, with Hines Ward for years,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, remember DeMarcus Ayers told me whenever he played that was called the F spot, so that has not changed in several seasons.
Okay, good way to end up the show, I think. Right, we started kind of with a question about James Washington, sort of, in some of the responses, and we end that way. So I think it played out kind of perfect here.
Poetic podcast for us.
Me and poetic just don't go together, but within that,
more slam poetry, more harsher.
There you go. And what do they call Clarion nowadays?
Pennsylvania West. They merged the schools, and it's all going to shut down in 5 years anyway. I'm sure.
You got to get that tattoo on your stomach, Penn West Life.
I gotta get the Clarion Life one removed, and then I'll get the Penn West one.
Okay, and you'll put that you'll have that etched on the back window of your Porsche, right?
You keep saying I drive a glorified Toyota Camry, Dave. Like, I don't know what you think I'm driving. I'm trying to buy a car, and it's been a lot of disaster. So.
Oh, okay. I've been thinking maybe I'm confusing that whole car talk of yours. I view it as you've been trying to buy a Porsche.
No, trying to buy a stupid Infinity and stupid. Anyway, it's fine.
You should get a Porsche.
I don't want a Porsche.
All right, enough entertainment for the. They get what they pay for today. So within that, Alex and I'll be back on Friday. If you dare to do it, follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex Kozora on the Twitter machine at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Let's see. If you want to, email theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Ad-free version, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of the site. A lot of people still taking us up on that. Also, going to have a lot of great, it's a bye week and all, but some of these press conferences today, we're going to have all this written up on the site throughout the day here. So we hope that you're visiting SteelersDepot.com throughout the rest of the week. We'll have some game threads going on Sunday as well, too. Jonathan Heitritter will continue to preview players to watch on Saturdays there for college football. That's been going over real well as well, too. So what we're saying is the Steelers are on the bye. We are not. Within that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.